Awesome. Well, it looks like we're live on Facebook now. So, welcome everyone to Edgar Casey's ARE and our conscious conversation here live on Facebook tonight. I'm Kathy Lamm. I'm the marketing director here at Edgar Casey's ARE, and this is Mike Powers. He is
Hello.
the all talented Mike Powers guru.
Oh, right. Yeah, keep going. Have you run out of cool things to say already about me?
Oh no, spiritual confidant. Let's see.
Ah,
There's
I
lots,
like
lots
that.
more I can say
A
about you.
spiritual confidant.
Yeah, very good. So I know that it's funny, we're going to be talking about vulnerability tonight, and you and I haven't been together in a while.
I
We
know.
were doing these conversations pretty consistent, and then
Hmm.
a few things happen. You miss a couple days because life gets involved and
Right.
holidays and birthdays. Happy birthday. So
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And were we on before your birthday, or has it been that long?
no, it has been that long, but our
Yeah.
birthdays are pretty close to one another. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so I think we celebrated together. But so
Absolutely.
tonight we're talking about vulnerability, and that's a big, heavy subject. And I think that leading up to this conversation, of course, we're always faced with our own opportunities for growth and challenges and changes during that time, right?
Hmm. Absolutely. So I'm just sharing our. I'm vulnerably got caught sharing our thing on here. So
Technology does make us vulnerable, right?
yes, it definitely, no doubt about it. It does. It definitely
That's
does.
right. I mean, even right before we started this, we were like a minute or two late. And I was like, oh, I hope I have a good connection. I mean, doesn't technology today, with everybody working virtual and via Zoom and all these different meetings, talking about vulnerability in our lifestyle and how things have changed,
Yeah.
not only amongst a pandemic, and so
Mm,
we're vulnerable at our health level,
yes.
at our capacity to work and think and produce. So,
Yeah, yeah. I read something the other day about technology and in regards to our children. And by the time our kids turn 10, they have already out technologied us. So just know, you think you got a hold of the parental controls, but really they have control over you. So something to think about, not necessarily right now, but you're going to have to be vulnerable in this world of technology where our kids are like scooping all this stuff up at a rate that we can't even keep up with. It's almost like there was a part of our lives where we didn't have it, and then we had to play catch up ball, and they were born into it. So it's that's an interesting thing, and we're going to have to be a little bit vulnerable to this technology, and say we don't know everything in order to kind of, like, I don't know, keep control over a few of these things with our children.
yeah, I agree with
Scary,
that.
scary.
Absolutely. So I'm going to do something real quick. I'm going to share my screen because I
Okay.
really want to start with, let's start with the definition of vulnerability,
Ooh.
and and here it is, being vulnerable. It's susceptible to physical or emotional attack or harm. I'm sorry, and this would be spiritual, I would say as well. Mind, body, spirit, as we know, it takes all three of those things to make a whole person. So susceptible to attack or harm. But if you think about vulnerability, it's the noun and it's the quality or state of being exposed to that opportunity. So that's really what we're talking about tonight, is being exposed to the possibility of being harmed, or I don't know if I want to use the word attack, but that was Webster's
Yeah.
definition of vulnerability.
I'm glad you brought that up
So,
because I did the same thing. I looked it up as well. I looked up because
yeah.
the meaning of vulnerability to me is something completely different than what you find in Webster's dictionary. I got a frozen screen. Sorry. See what's happening here.
And I think that one of the things that's happening right now is that we are vulnerable to technology. So, um, and there we are.
All right.
So,
I never know.
and
Is it me? Is it you? I don't know what's going on.
there we go again. We
Uh,
are vulnerable to technology. And I just got a post that said, "We keep losing you and you're frozen." So let me,
oh,
um, I'm glad that we have people monitoring
very good.
to make sure that we are. So let's go ahead and just get started about this conversation, Mike, and about,
Okay.
where we are in the state of the world right now and our vulnerability.
Yeah. I immediately went to the C.S. Lewis quote, and to love is to be vulnerable. Now, when I think about that, I think about letting go and learning to love somebody so unconditionally, or something so unconditionally, that you just throw yourself into it, knowing the impermanence of everything. And that's really being vulnerable. That's just knowing that none of this is forever, yet I'm going to love the hell out of it while it's all here. And that to me is a great definition of vulnerability, and where I want to be with that word at this point. I don't want to look at it as like emotional attacks, and because I definitely want to talk about what it meant to me when I was younger, and how I started as a young kid to be pretty vulnerable, and then you look at it almost as a weakness, and then you go from weakness to starting to learn to be vulnerable again. And not everybody does that. Everybody just kind of stops at, well, it's a weakness. It's somebody is going to take advantage of me at this point because I'm being vulnerable. They're seeing me in a weak state. But as you learn more about vulnerability, you're actually becoming more powerful the more vulnerable you are.
Mhm. I think also too, like you're talking about when you're younger and you allow yourself to be vulnerable in certain situations and then you get hurt. And then you start to build, we talked a little bit about this. You start to build a wall around you. You start to build a
Mm.
wall around your heart, and then you begin to separate yourself. And then we do things to numb ourselves from the situation, we take drugs or we drink alcohol or we dive into other bad habits or we become angry or just step away from feeling joy, and we numb ourselves to that experience of joy and love.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We're cheating ourselves. We're cutting ourselves off from what's rightfully ours. And when I talked a little bit about, being a child, and I've gone through this in meditation pretty intensely a few times, where and take it as you will, I'm sitting face to face with my childhood self, and I'm seeing this vulnerable yet naive child. And I use the word naive because I'm still so connected as to soul at that point. The conditioning is very, very limited, especially when I was younger. I don't remember having a lot of socialization and conditioning. It did come, but it was learned. You become a little bit harder as life goes on, and you start to fall into some of these pitfalls, if you will. So I remember being young and being vulnerable and being so in love with everybody and so forgiving with everybody. And as you get older, you start to see the physical plane, I guess you could say, take advantage of that. And the more you get socialized, the more you make your way out into the world, it becomes a crutch, it becomes a weakness, and then it becomes something you really have to work with and you have to learn about. It's, I, I think a lot about vulnerability, not as much as so many other things in my spiritual work. But when I sat down the last couple of days, I mean, I brought my little notebook, my little journal with me today, because I have just been writing and writing and writing what it is to be vulnerable, almost like an I am meditation. I am this, I am love, I am confidence, I am, what is it to be vulnerable? And I've done a lot of thinking about that. And you talk about, like, back when I was a kid and being vulnerable with people, you're almost like, at first, when I was saying naive earlier, you're giving somebody what you think they need in order to be happy, because you're still so connected to soul. You're still so happy just being. And um and then the next person takes it, and the next person takes a little bit more, and keeps taking, and you're letting them get away with it. You're being vulnerable without boundaries. And I think that's what it is now. Now you start to work with it, like, now we get into the whole boundary situation and vulnerability. And I'll let you go because I'm kind of rambling on a little bit, but
You're
I
good.
can go on for, I've
No,
been
you know,
really thinking about this.
it's really a good point, and there are so many different aspects to being vulnerable and vulnerability. And when I was looking up, I went into the readings today, and I was looking up some information on vulnerability for our talk from Edgar Casey, and I came upon something that really talks to exactly what you were just saying. So I'm going to go ahead and share this screen with you one more time. Let me see.
I love when we do this. It feels so professional.
I know, I know. If I can get it to work correctly, it's professional. Okay, so here is the Edgar Casey reading, and I'm not going to read it because then I'm going to be very vulnerable because I don't do a very good job at reading out loud. So I'm just going to give the gist of this reading. And the truth is that you can't find, you were talking about being connected to source, being connected to soul, being connected to the divinity within, to God, to everything that is your true self. And you're not going to find that in any great deed or in fame or in fortune or the things that you seek outside of your body to gratify yourself through, material desires. You're truly going to find that joy and that happiness through being gentle and kind, through long suffering. I love when Edgar Casey would say long suffering because it really spoke to the
Yeah.
term of, understanding that there's a lot of pain that brings joy in the world, that you have to suffer to a certain degree and understand that pain
Right.
to see the joy in it and to bear the fruits. And that's really what we're aiming and working towards, is bearing the fruits of joy and contentment and love. And the way that we can do it is nurturing ourselves and others through kindness and patience. And
Yeah, that's
truly, that
quite.
we're not going to find that consciousness through all of that exterior stuff. We talked about that before,
Yeah.
looking for something outside of what we are, to solve these issues. It's not going to happen there. So we
Yeah,
grow in grace and knowledge and understanding through all of this patience and connection to source.
you're not going to know grace until you know suffering.
Mm.
And it's such an important lesson, because I think there's a point in all of our lives where we just kind of like roll along through it, and we want to make every moment the greatest moment of all time, but we're not really present actually in that moment. It's being vulnerable is also, it's putting your guard down. It's telling all the troops that are surrounding your heart and protecting you, go away, take the day off, and surrendering to the moment, surrendering to whatever it is that you're doing, whoever it is that you're with in that moment. That's really what it is to be vulnerable, without judgment, to be there with somebody without judgment, without them being afraid, or you being afraid of being judged as well. That's a whole nother thing. It goes both ways. When you're vulnerable with another human being, you will be surprised how quickly they can come back and mirror that. I mean, we talk about it so much in our spiritual practice, the law of attraction, and what we are, we will attract. And if we are vulnerable, it may take time and it may take patience with some people. And it may take you, like I said earlier, to get run over a couple of times.
Mhm.
And if it's just a couple of times, that's okay. That's why we do the practice. That's why we do the work. That's why we have a spiritual life. But when we are vulnerable with them, something in them cracks, and something in us cracks, and we can really be together. That's what it is to really be together, not just to have a surface BS conversation, or just go through the everyday hustle, and to really go to be there and wash dishes with somebody, and really be there and wash dishes with them. And I use that because I don't really love to wash dishes, but I just try to be in there.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that what our soul seeks most is companionship,
Yeah.
community, relatability to one another?
Mm,
And think about all the opportunities that fear holds us back from, you know,
hmm
in saying certain words to people and holding that emotion back, that not being vulnerable enough to say, I'm sorry, or thank you, or I love you. Those things actually hold us back from being able to experience that deep joy and that gratitude. And
Yeah.
just by allowing ourselves to be vulnerable enough to do that.
Yeah. And when you're saying, and I'm sorry, you're not just saying, and I'm sorry. You are the sorry. You are the emotion. You are the feeling. When you say, I love you, you're not just saying an empty, I love you. You're being love in that moment. That's what it is to be vulnerable. And I want to go back to also, Kathy, the boundaries, because yes, we're supposed to have the patience to give people the grace that they need, but you also have to get to a point where you're able to step back and go, we're not ready for this yet. We're not ready at this point. And it doesn't necessarily have to be with another human being. It could be with a hobby. It could be with your job. It could be with anything. Really feel, is this a part of my dharma? Am I doing my dharma? Am I living within my true self? And that comes with vulnerability. And when you feel like a job or a person or whatever it is you're in relationship with is not merging with you, it's not giving you what you want back, it's okay to create that boundary. It will eventually happen. It may not happen with you, it may not happen with them, but it eventually will happen, in a sense, for everybody, but you
Mhm.
have to give it time.
Right. I thought it was interesting too that you said boundaries, not only with other people, but also with yourself and understanding what your capabilities are and what your limitations are. I think that's important too.
Yeah,
You're the lead singer of a band, you get up on stage, that's got to be a very vulnerable position to be in
it
as an
can be.
artist to put your soul out there, your banjo breaks or your guitar or
Yeah.
how do you handle these situations and that kind of thing. So I'm an artist, so I have the same vulnerability. I remember one of the first art show that I did that was a public art show. I remember setting up the morning, and after I had everything set up, I actually set my chair up behind my booth so that nobody would see me, that they would only see
Ah,
my artwork because I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to step out and to engage with people because I felt unworthy. And that's really what it
mm.
comes down to too is worthiness. Worthiness and vulnerability. If we say that we're not worthy of something, then that makes us vulnerable.
Yeah, you just said a lot there, and I have to kind of take it piece by piece, because first, you talked about boundaries with ourselves, and that's so important too, because what are our limitations? And it's okay to have them. For example, if I go up on stage and I'm singing a song and there's a certain high note I know that I can't hit, I can't expect myself to hit that note. It's not going to happen. If there's a certain level of guitar or banjo that I can hit, I have to be okay with that. when I go on tour and play with the band, which we haven't done in a very, very long time, and you could equate this to anything. You can equate this to art, and I've been reading a lot of Rainer Maria Rilke. He is a an awesome poet and talks a lot about the creative process and the artist and the pain that the artist goes through. But we're all that artist in a sense. We all have these things that we're super passionate about that we love to create. That when they don't quite work out the way we want, we're pretty hard on ourselves. So that's when we have to be vulnerable with ourselves as well and know our boundaries. And if we exceed a little bit, it's going to feel good, but we can't expect, like I'm not going to go in solo away a certain somebody else can solo, out on the tour circuit. If I'm at a festival and I'm playing with a band and some guy's wailing away on the banjo and he's 1,000 times better than I am, there was probably a time where I'd go, well, I gotta figure this out and I gotta get that good. No, now I just enjoy what it is that that person is bringing to the table, what they're bringing to the stage, what they're bringing to the universe, what they're putting out there. It's a much more beautiful way to live your life, and I know that there's something in me that will balance that out. So it's finding that boundary with not just other people, but also with yourself. And I think like that's a pretty good example. And I'm sure in the world of art, as you must see it all the time. If you go to an art show, there's going to be specialty artists in every single field, and then you're going to start to see everything you're not. That's where the brain normally goes, doesn't it? Like we start to see like, oh well, this person can stencil better than I can, and this person could do, and you'll do that. Your brain will do that to you instead of just enjoying everybody's individual gifts.
Oh, yeah. And that's absolutely where I went too with that art show. I was looking around at all of these amazing artists that were there, and I was comparing myself to them and saying, I'm just beneath all of this. And
Mm.
I will have to tell you that I won an award for that show of Best Newcomer.
Oh,
So I was like,
nice.
all right, well, there you go. So look at
But you
all
were
of that.
like, I've been painting my whole life. I'm a veteran of this game. What's going on here? A newcomer? What are you talking about? Because that's what your brain will do. Your brain will find the thing to make you start to second guess yourself instead of appreciating being the newcomer. I'm sure that's where your brain went. It would be it would be the same thing for anybody. I mean, anybody would feel that. And that's why you just kind of notice those feelings of vulnerability. And you're like, oh, okay, this is what it is. What a great moment this is. But you
Yeah,
have to
and
catch it. You have to catch yourself.
right. And, we talk about not taking the steps or not taking the jump or the risk.
Mm,
You know, I wouldn't be where I am today if I had not taken that first step to do that first art show. And we never know what doors it's going to open, what
yeah.
opportunities are going to come from even something as simple as, just taking one little step in a direction and allowing ourselves to be that raw and that vulnerable.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. And that's another great definition of what it is to be vulnerable. It's trying. It's trying new things. It's putting yourself out there. Like they say in the Bhagavad Gita, it's doing your dharma without the attachment of the score, the final score, the result of things. I think back to when I was a kid and I think about all the things that I didn't do because I was afraid. I was afraid of looking silly. I was afraid of saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing. I look back to 2 weeks ago and I think about things that no, I mean your whole life. I mean that's
Yeah.
what it is. We're so afraid to put ourselves out there and not look cool or not be successful at something right away. And we do our best work when we're doing something just for the pure enjoyment of doing it, for the love of the game, for the love of doing it. And I think that's so important. And I tell my kids that all the time, but they don't listen. They're going to have to find out for themselves, just like I found out for myself. myself, I will tell them, you should go do XYZ. You should go to this school dance. You should try this. And they'll say, "Well, I don't know, I'm just not ready for it yet, Dad." And I'm like, "Well, it's so important. Just go out and have fun." Yeah, but then so and so will make fun of me, and I don't really want to deal with that. I'll just stay in my comfort zone. And then you got to let it go, and you got to let them figure it out, because that's exactly what I was talking about earlier. The second you learn that, or you're taught in a way that vulnerability is a weakness, that's the awakening. And you're like, okay, it's real. And then the shift, that's the fun part. It's the journey out of it. It's actually getting out there and embarrassing yourself from time to time and doing things out of pure love and enjoyment.
Right. The other thing too is that we live in a society that it conditions us not to be
Oh,
vulnerable.
yeah.
We have to wear masks now in this pandemic. I mean, isn't that a huge vulnerability that we can't breathe freely and walking the
Right.
streets or going to school, and our
Yeah.
children are learning this too. We go to the airport and we have to essentially strip down to be able to get on a plane. And we drive down the street. You drive down Shore Drive, and there's a sign on the side of the road that says 87 people have died on this street. Um,
Yeah.
you're in the airport, and they say, you know, if you see a piece of luggage that's left behind, I mean, it's like
Right.
every single thing that we do and we interact with, we
Yeah.
are conditioned in fear not to be vulnerable, to protect ourselves, that we have to protect ourselves every minute of the day. And what is this
Yeah.
doing to our children? You know, that we're teaching them this. It's actually separating them from spirit. It's separating them from source. It's numbing them and conditioning them that it's not okay to be open and vulnerable and experience the highest of emotions: love, joy, gratitude, because
Yeah.
you can't numb the dark ones, the fear and anxiety and worry and all of that stuff, and expect
Right.
the good ones to shine through. You can't
Yeah,
do that.
that's an excellent point. And it's just shocking to me, because I had all these ideas of, what this conversation would be about. And this vulnerability word, oh, I think I lost you. Oh wait, hang on a second. No, I'm here. I'm sorry.
No,
My
you are.
mom was calling. And do you see me? I don't see
I
you,
see
but
you.
I'll
My
figure it.
mom
Okay,
too.
good. All right. All right. I should have muted my phone. All right, I'm just gonna talk. I don't see anything. I'm just looking at a blank screen. But well, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought, Kathy. I was saying, what
Well,
was I
that
saying?
we were talking about vulnerability, Mike. Now and being vulnerable to your
Oh,
going
okay. Were
through.
we? Was that? No, just how many different areas of life this could just kind of fall into, and it turns out that it's every single area of life.
It's every aspect of life that you have to deal with.
I see.
And and you had talked about boundaries. And then,
Yeah.
right now we have to set a lot of boundaries around ourselves of things that are going on in the world.
Mm,
And it's not really boundaries like I was talking about, blocking it out and setting up a wall and numbing yourself, but it's setting boundaries to say, this is not mine. I don't own that emotional state that you're experiencing or that problem that
yeah.
you're having. And I still love you and respect you, but that's yours to own. So those boundaries are really important too. And I think that it makes us vulnerable and it allows the other person to be vulnerable as well, having those
Yeah.
boundaries.
Yeah. And I was thinking about this earlier too. Aren't we just vulnerable living here on this planet? Aren't we? I mean, we're living on a planet, and granted, it was 6 million years ago, I believe. I don't know, but that the we hit the reset button. Dinosaurs were wiped out. I think there was like 15 species left on the planet, and yeah, I mean, and this has happened to this planet 6 other times.
Yep.
So, like, aren't we just vulnerable living here? I mean, what are we doing right now, like right this second. There's always something. There's always something out there that will ground us right where we are. And I mean, it's available 24/7, 7 days a week. And you could look at it as a hindrance, or you can look at it as, okay, yeah, I better enjoy this. This is a, pandemic, no pandemic, meteor shower, no meteor shower. This is a pretty beautiful gift that I've been given, a human birth. So let me enjoy it. Let me be vulnerable with it. Vulnerability grounds you right where you are, and it really is quite beautiful. I mean, you haven't lived until you've been vulnerable enough to actually live.
Right. Yes, you're absolutely right. So we talk about, what it is to be vulnerable and the ups and the downs and what have you, but how do we work with that in our spiritual practice? What does that look like to allow ourselves to become more vulnerable, um, without, completely exposing ourselves to harm and attack? What does that mean in our spiritual journey, and what are the things that we can focus on? Where are the energies that we can focus? You and I talk a lot about meditation and source, and you had talked about being able to connect with that divine self. I mean, it starts with the inner work
Mhm.
before we can put it out. So starting with meditation, gratitude.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely meditation, definitely gratitude. I think through meditation, the more you do it, the more you can quiet your mind, the more you can go back to these places in your life where you learned, um, where you learned how to be vulnerable, where you learned that, oh my God, I can't be vulnerable, or you thought it wasn't okay to be vulnerable. I mean, Kathy, this is just me being vulnerable with everybody, sitting there, falling in love again with my childhood self and understanding him, as opposed to looking at him, and I say him, I mean me, as a burden, as something that wasn't good enough, something that needed improvement, that needed to be better. And I think now, through meditation and gratitude and a lot of grace, I'd rather be back there. I'm working to go back there, as opposed to looking at, the being run over while being vulnerable, looking at it as a weakness, and then creating something outside of my true self that was, as Ramdas would call it, going into somebody training, trying to become a somebody, a somebody that really isn't you. It's a new creation. It's a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde scenario. And I would rather be vulnerable and pushed around every once in a while and in love with everything and everybody than angry and on guard all the time. So
Yes.
I think that's what it is. And that's me being, at the risk of sounding spiritually lame, I mean, that's me being super vulnerable with everybody. I would rather be that kid than be what went on somewhere in the middle there.
Right. Well, I mean, isn't that what the journey is about and the life experience is about? We start at childhood and we take on all of these teachings and we take on pain and experience and we put that all in our body like clothes, and we just keep carrying more and more and more and more until we get to the point where it's like, okay,
Mm,
I need to return to true self. What is life really about? And then we
yeah.
start discarding all of that stuff. That's what the spiritual journey is about, is let's discard all of that stuff that no longer serves us, all the baggage that we were given through teachings or negative experiences, or even witnessing someone else's experience. That could even happen to where we claim it as our own and hold on to it. So the
Yeah.
spiritual journey is to truly return to that childlike, that God self,
Yeah.
without all of that external baggage.
Yeah. Yeah. And you just keep, you just keep throwing on outfit after outfit,
Mhm.
luggage, more luggage. And essentially, your spiritual journey is to get naked. You're just taking it all off, one
Right.
garment at a time. And I mentioned Ram Dass before, but he had this really terrific analogy. It's like somebody going out and wearing an outfit that's so out there and so like wild that you don't even see the soul behind the outfit. You just see the projection, you see what it is they're trying to project as opposed to what's really inside. And that's so important. And I think when you're vulnerable, slowly you start to shed all of these different outfits and different suits and all the baggage that you carry along with you, until that you might just leave the house with a one or two bags. That's it. Maybe a sweatshirt every now and again, depending on the weather. But that is a great analogy, Kathy. It's just to shed all of it.
Yeah, it really is returning to that self. And then I want to also talk about, what it's like to have other people around you. I'm going to share my screen again because I do have
All right.
another reading from Edgar Casey, that just talks about there's so much around us all the time. There's hate, adversity, there's selfishness and anger and people being afraid. And what do we have to do to stay out of that, and
Mm,
still allow ourselves to be vulnerable in that situation without harm,
yeah.
and that is truly going within our own hearts and opening the consciousness and knowing that we are our divine selves and we are connected to source and to the universe and to God.
Yeah, I know that we could stay off social media a little bit more, but I know we're doing a Facebook Live, so I'll save that. Um, yeah, I think that's a big part of it too. Is when we're in these moments Facebook or we're on Instagram, and we're getting caught up in all the things that we're not. Um, take a second to kind of put yourself in a different space. Treat your social media as a meditation. Almost treat you're having a tough day at work, maybe make a shift and treat it as a meditation. And I think about what you said too, like we're always in it. And I really do. I want to go back to the kids for a second, because they are in a really hard spot. I mean, everybody is right now with social media, and nobody wants to be made to look a fool. So everybody is walking around like they're going to be filmed all the time, 24 hours a day,
That's
7 days
a
a
good point.
week. Yeah, and I think that it's hard for all of us to just be, so loose and not worry. And if you trip and fall, odds are it's going to be on a fail compilation on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube. And I could see why kids aren't trying. I could see why people are caught up. But then I also know it's closing people down. It's also closing your heart as well. So we have to live a little bit more in reality, and reality of being with each other. I know that's hard right now, especially with a worldwide pandemic and everything, but it's something to definitely think about once things start to shift, is you shifting with it. Are you really sick of Zoom? Are you really sick of Facebook? Are you really sick of Instagram? Are you going to be able to walk away from it once this is all over? I
Mhm.
hope so. I hope so, because it's, even with all the mistakes and being made to look like the fool every now and again, it's so much more beautiful than being on guard all the time.
Right. And I mean, in returning to, nature and to ourselves and our own creativity, to our community, to our family, and disconnecting from that social media and getting caught up in that energy. It's so easy to
Oh,
get caught in energy, Energy creates and expands, and the more that we focus on it, the larger it gets, the bigger the energy is created. So the way that we can get away from that is to create our own positive energy within and to push that outward rather than getting caught up in someone else's energy or even global energy. And,
Yeah.
I think that it's okay every once in a while to go into that space, but you can't live there. You just
Right. Right.
pull yourself out.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you have to go into that space. I mean, that space could be fun sometimes. Don't get me wrong, but it's what is the why behind you going into that space? That's such an important question. I think when you're going in and you and your friends are breaking each other's stones or whatever, and it's out of a place, a real place of like love and understanding, and this is what we do, but you just know, you feel it inside when it gets to that ugly place, when it gets to a place where it really really hurts. And we're all so afraid to say, yo, that really really hurts. And because then it could pile on, but we got to do that with each other. We do have to have fun, and we do have to live this human experience, but we also have to know when to say enough's enough, like this is it. We had a good time. Now let's go back to being spiritual beings, please.
Right. Right. Yeah, and giving yourself, grace and being gentle with yourself and compassionate with yourself. A lot of people deal with health issues, and you don't allow yourself to be vulnerable in
Yeah.
this process, in the situation of how to process different health concerns, and we don't open ourselves up to that, um, as well as mental
Mm-hmm.
and physical
Yeah.
issues. So
Yeah. I mean, think about, why do so many people not want to go to the gym? Because they're afraid to go and, start. They're afraid to go and ask questions. How do I use these weights? How do I do this exercise? Because there are people that are going to make them feel smaller than try to make them feel smaller to prop themselves up. But that's when you just got to say F it. Like, I am this is who I am, and this is, and that's where like those boundaries come in, to not let people have that power over you. um we need to be more vulnerable, because then we are cheating ourselves from getting out there and actually seeing what it is that we love, what it is that we want to become, what it is that we want to do. We're cheating ourselves because we're afraid to do it. And I
right.
say
We're
it's
afraid of judgment.
yeah, it's all of us. We're all so afraid. We're afraid of sounding stupid. We're afraid of looking stupid. And I even hate using that word, but I mean that those are the things that we are so afraid of. And we've got to surrender. We've got to surrender to it. We've got to let that stuff go. Otherwise, life is going to feel like it has a stranglehold on you. So once you make friends with vulnerability, you will you'll live a pretty amazing life. And it takes time, but you got to start. You have to start somewhere, and you have to be patient with yourself as you go through it. I mean, I feel like every one of our talks, our conscious conversations, there has to be patience in there. There has to be patience in your meditation practice. There has to be patience when you're going through some sort of change where you want to get somewhere, you want to become enlightened. That's going to take a little time. You got to be patient. All of these things, patience is the key. And 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 being gentle with yourself, that's the other one that we always like to bring up.
Yes, yes. And I think the other thing is leaning into vulnerability. If we lean into it and accept it for what it is and accept the moment for what it is, rather than trying to change it or resist it or change other people or
Yeah.
resist their behavior or your own reaction to it, just
Hmm.
lean into it and be okay with whatever is at the moment and have gratitude for it. We can alter our own vibration and our own frequency by shifting our emotions. We can
Right.
choose gratitude over fear.
When you okay, like when you're going through something, okay, and you've gone through some things here recently. I don't want to put it all out there, but you've gone through some things where you might have had certain days, or even a couple of days, or even a few, or a week, I don't know, where it's like, okay, I've run into it. It's easy to get caught up in that, and then just that's the thing that keeps going. And when you decide to make that shift and you start to pull yourself out of it, instead of going like, well, I just spent a week, or I just spent all day bummed out and depressed, celebrate the fact that you pulled yourself out of it. Celebrate the fact that you were vulnerable enough to go, all right, there was something going on in here that needed attention. I'm going to look at it, and now I'm going to start to shift in another direction. I think about that in my depressive states, for example, are not as long as they used to be. They could last 2 weeks sometimes, they could last a month. And now, if they last 2 days, I'm not going to get caught up in the 2 days they were. I'm going to go, okay, that was only 2 days, or that was just a day, or that was an hour. Celebrate your achievements as a human being, not the fact that you got caught up for a while, because you can just be reborn in every single moment, but you have to think that way.
Right, right. And have gratitude for allowing yourself to go into that state, and understanding that sometimes you need to be there to fully comprehend all aspects of what you're dealing with. Sometimes you have to be in that state and just have gratitude for that space.
Yeah.
So that's funny.
What's that? We got comments and stuff we got to get
Well,
to.
we had a funny question. So,
Okay.
they're asking if we're married. So, yes, I am married and Mike is married.
Yes.
Mike has a wonderful spouse named Heather, and I have a wonderful spouse named Bruce. So, yes, we're both married.
She has
And we,
twins and kids and stuff, and I have two girls. And it was funny. My in-laws were just here, and they made me a shirt that says, "I'm not afraid of you. I have two daughters." I thought that was a
that's
really, I
awesome.
thought that was a really nice gift from them.
I
But
do
yeah,
think
I mean, oh,
I
go
think
ahead.
it's interesting that you're surrounded by women and I'm
Hmm.
surrounded by men because I have
Very
three
funny.
boys and my husband, and you have your wife and two girls. So,
Who's more vulnerable, you or your husband?
we have our moments. We ebb and
Okay.
flow together very nicely.
Oh,
So,
nice, nice, nice.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I think this is like, again, if you guys have any questions, please leave them in the comments, and Kathy and I will definitely go back to them and answer everybody back, or if there's any that we have to get to while we're here. I also I'm going into the journal for a minute, because I was just writing like nobody's business when it came to vulnerability, and I want to throw this quote at you because you were reading some Rumi the other day, and this I think this quote speaks to vulnerability. Um, Open your hands if you want to be held. Is that not like the just that's it right there?
Yeah.
Isn't that what vulnerability is to fall into the embrace of another without worrying about, well, what should I be doing this, shouldn't I, like, what are you feeling, in that moment? Is there judgment here? I mean, and then I just started writing all these things of what it is to be vulnerable, and it's to be honest with no fear of the consequences of your truth. It is to be comfortable and rest in your true nature. Really be comfortable with who you are. It's to be daring to take a chance and be okay with anything that's going to come from it, good or bad. It's to merge with whatever it is that you're doing. It's to move from the unconscious to the conscious. And I think that's a really important one, because we can very easily fall into an unconscious state where we're walking through our life, not even walking, we're just sleeping through our lives.
Right.
And once you become vulnerable enough to get in touch with the actual feelings going on in your life, that's where you can really make that shift to living consciously. And then it's to look into another person's eyes and really see soul, not judgment, just love. Another human being, merging with another human being, being connected with another human being, the oneness in another human being. And to me, that's what it is. That's what it is to be vulnerable, to even say that, knowing that I'm going to have dude friends make fun of me for saying that. That's fine. I wrote that. I made a journal.
That's
Okay. I
awesome.
just want to say that. But yeah, that's to me, that's just a couple of things of what it is to be vulnerable.
Because isn't it the truth that that's the reason that we're here, is to love one another,
Hmm.
and experience love on every level? And isn't that the most vulnerable state there is to just open yourself up to that?
Yeah. It's hard to do because when you really love and you let go, there's the fear of, of all of it, of losing it. Like I said earlier, the impermanence of it, but you still do it. And that's being vulnerable.
I think of Edgar Casey too, and I think that the entire organization of Edgar Casey's ARE is built on the foundation of vulnerability. I mean, think about this. The man went to sleep to have his readings. He was in a state of sleep, and that was where the readings came through. How
Yeah.
vulnerable is that, to open yourself up to help heal other people through that state? And, our entire organization, the entire
Mm.
foundation is built on that vulnerability.
Yeah, it's quite beautiful to think about. And when you're given a gift like that, like you have, Edgar Casey has. I mean, everybody has something inside of them that's unique and special to them that contributes to not a separateness, but a oneness. And that's when you know you're doing your true work, your dharma. What a thing to go through life. And Edgar Casey, I don't know if he thought it, but he had to have all the judgment coming from everywhere. I mean, he was doing something so amazing and unique that he had to know there was going to be people questioning him, and that you have your non-believers out there, but you have to be vulnerable enough to have the strength to put it out there and live your truth. And he
Yeah.
absolutely did that. I mean, that's amazing. That's amazing to think about.
Yeah,
It's inspiring. Jesus,
absolutely.
I feel inspired right now. That because it's true. I mean, even when you're doing what you love, and I am so lucky. Like I get to do what I love. You get to do what you love. There's still a vulnerability to it because there's still somebody judging something that you love more than anything in the entire world, and there's going to be people trying to tear it down, and it takes a lot of courage to stick with it and to get better at it, to always keep learning at it, and to know that I no matter how good I become at my passion about the things that I love, I don't know everything. So I'm going to keep learning, and I'm going to keep loving, and I'm just going to be in it regardless of how much money I make, what kind of status I achieve, or what so and so has to say about it. It's really beautiful. So even if you feel like you're failing, and it's things aren't working out and you need to be more vulnerable, or you're at the top of your game, vulnerability is something that's so important as well.
Wow.
Cool.
Well,
Yeah. Wow. I
couldn't
know.
even say it better.
Awesome.
What a perfect
Awesome.
way to end this conversation, because that pretty much just summed it all up there, Mike. So,
Wow.
yeah, I greatly appreciate you. I
Same
appreciate
here.
the time we spend together, these conversations. I hope that they're helpful and inspiring to everyone here. And I'm so grateful for the people here coming and to interact with us. And we'll be doing this again soon. In a
Yeah,
few weeks.
absolutely. It won't be more than a few weeks. Things happen, life happens, but it really is awesome to be back and just hanging out with people, just being here with people. So thank you all so much for letting us be here with you.
Yes, thank you so much. And any comments that you want to leave, Mike and I will respond to them afterwards. So, okay, thanks a lot. Good to see you, Mike.
Good to
We'll
see
see
you
you
too.
soon.
Happy belated birthday to John Lennon too. 80 years old.
All right. Bye-bye now.